Lord Spittleworth's Problem is the title of chapter 25 of the Ickabog by J.K. Rowling. Unfortunately for Lord Spittleworth, Mr. Dovetail wasn't the only person who'd started voicing doubts about the Ickabog. Cornucopia was slowly growing poorer. The rich merchants had no problem paying their Ickabog taxes. They gave the collectors 2 ducats a month and increased the price on their pastries, cheeses and hams and wines to pay themselves back. However, 2 gold ducats a month was increasingly hard to find for the poorer folk, especially with the food at the markets being more expensive. Meanwhile, up in the marshlands, children began to grow hollow-cheeked. Spittleworth, who'd spies in every city and village, began hearing word that people wanted to know what their gold was being spent on, and even to demand proof that the monster was still a danger. Now people said of the cities of Cornucopia that their inhabitants had different natures. Jeroboamers were supposed to be brawlers and dreamers, the Kurdsburgers peaceful and courteous, while the citizens of Shoeville were often said to be proud, even snooty. But the people of Baronstown were said to be plain speakers and honest dealers, and it was here that the first serious outbreak of disbelief in the Ickabog happened. A butcher called Tubby Tenderloin called a meeting in the town hall. Tubby was careful not to say he didn't believe in the Ickabog, but he invited everyone at the meeting to sign a petition to the king asking for evidence that the Ickabog tax was still necessary. As soon as this meeting was over, Spittleworth's spy, who had of course attended the meeting, jumped on his horse and rode south, arriving at the palace by midnight. Woken by a footman, Spittleworth hurriedly summoned Lord Flapoon and Major Roach from their beds, and the 2 men joined Spittleworth in his bedroom to hear what the spy had to say. The spy told the story of the treasonous meeting, and then unfurled a map on which he'd helpfully circled the houses of the ringleaders, including that of Tubby Tenderloin. "Excellent work," growled Roach. "We'll have all of them arrested for treason and slung in jail. Simple." "It isn't simple at all," said Spittleworth impatiently. "There were 200 people at this meeting, and we can't lock up 200 people. We haven't got room, for one thing, and for another, everyone will just say it proves we can't show the Ickabog's real." "Then we'll shoot 'em," said Flapoon, "and wrap 'em up like we did Beamish, and leave 'em by the marsh to be found, and people'll think the Ickabog got them." "Is the Ickabog supposed to have a gun now?" snapped Spittleworth. "And 200 cloaks in which to wrap its victims?" "Well, if you're going to sneer at our plans, my lord," said Roach, "why don't you come up with something clever yourself?" But that was exactly what Spittleworth couldn't do. Cudgel his sneaky brains, though he might, he couldn't think of any way to frighten the Cornucopians back into paying their taxes without complaint. What he needed was proof that the Ickabog really existed, but where was he to get it? Pacing alone in front of the fire after the others had gone back to bed, Spittleworth heard another tap on his bedroom door. "What now?" he snapped. Into the room slid his footman, Cankerby. "What do you want? Out with it quickly, I'm busy," said Spittleworth. "If it pleases your lordship," said Cankerby, "I happened to be passing your room earlier, and I couldn't help overhearing that there treasonous meeting in Baronstown, what you, Lord Flapoon and Major Roach was talking about." "Oh, you couldn't help it," said Spittleworth in a dangerous voice. "I thought I should tell you, my lord, that I've got evidence that there's a man here in the city within the city what thinks the same way as those traitors in Baronstown," said Cankerby. "He wants proof, just like them butchers do." "Sounded like treason to me when I heard about it," Well, of course it's treason, said Spittleworth. Who dares say such thing in the very shadow of the palace? Which of the king's servants dares to question the king's word? Well, as to that, said Canterbury, shuffling his feet, some would say that's valuable information. Some would... You tell me who it is, snarled Spittleworth, seizing the footman by the front of his jacket, and I'll see whether you deserve payment. Their name. Give me their name. It's Dan Dovetail, said the footman. Dovetail. Dovetail, I know that name, said Spittleworth, releasing the footman, who staggered sideways and fell into an end table. Wasn't there a seamstress? It was his wife, sir. She died, said Canterbury, straightening up. Yes, said Spittleworth slowly. He lives in that house by the graveyard, where they never fly a flag, and without a single portrait of the king in the windows. How do you know he's expressed those treasonous views? I happened to overhear Mrs. Beamish telling the scullery maid what he said, said Canterbury. You happen to hear a lot of things, don't you, Canterbury? Commented Spittleworth, feeling in his waistcoat for some gold. Very well. Here are 10 ducats for you. Thank you very much, my lord, said the footman, bowing low. Wait, said Spittleworth as Canterbury turned to go. What does he do, this Dovetail? What Spittleworth really wanted to know was whether the king would miss Mr. Dovetail if he disappeared. Dovetail, my lord? He's a carpenter, said Canterbury, and he bowed himself out of the room. Carpenter, repeated Spittleworth out loud. A carpenter. And as the door closed on Canterbury, another of Spittleworth's lightning strike ideas hit him, and so amazed was he at his own brilliance, he had to clutch the back of the sofa because he felt he might topple over.